the key to the power that we need. The world is gonna see that it's Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. It's the only way to be strong in victory. God has clothed us with his righteousness and power, and we live for him in our daytime and hour. We can stand upon the greatness of his word and proclaim the truth. We're gonna make it heard. We've got all the potential power God could ever give. Now we stand up on our legal rights and boldly make them live. The renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. The world is gonna see that it's Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. It's the only way to be strong in victory. We can claim the rights that God gave you and me. We can live above all principality. As we move with God, his power lies within, giving us the strength to conquer and to win. We've got all the enablements his love and grace provide. Now we put that truth within our hearts and walk with all God's might. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. We know that the renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. The world is gonna see that it's Christ in me. We know that the renewed mind is the key to the power that we need. It's the only way to be strong in victory. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me. The renewed mind is the key to the Christ in me.
The key to the Christ in me. The renewal is the key to the Christ. We know that the renewal is the key to the Christ in me. The Christ. What? Oh. May I have your attention for a very important public service announcement? We are taking over the internet, and the United States champion of word wrestling entertainment has returned for another edition of the Pocket Locker podcast. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, I am in airplane mode. Y'all already know what to do. Grab something to drink, grab something to smoke. It is time to link up with the gang and catch a vibe as we jump into the musical portion of the program. Through him, with him, in the unity of the flying man. All glory and honor is yours who fly for our sins forever and ever. Gang, you may drink.
In this life, only one or two will last. You're going through all the pain and strife. Turn your back and they're gone so fast. Oh yeah.
All right, we got Captain Desk in the chat. What up, Dave?
Oh.
the 90s babies. If you don't remember this song, that probably means you're not grown enough to be watching this channel. You need to take your ass over to Twitch and watch some gaming or something. All the grown folks remember this one. All the tones are just so killer.
Oh yeah, say again, but you don't know. Can you tell me? Oh no, say again, but you don't know. Can you tell me? Oh, say again, but you don't know. Say again, but you don't know. You don't know, don't know.
We just here to catch a vibe, y'all. Go ahead, jump in the airplane mode one time. All right, gang, we are going to jump straight into the main event of the evening. And this is just so interesting. So y'all probably seen it. It probably popped up on your feed, just like it popped up on my feed. We got genetically modified skeptic talking about being the nice atheist is annoying. Yeah, it's pretty annoying. It's just, I just think this whole thing is very interesting because, for those that don't know, he was recently featured on like Al Jazeera TV, right? And they basically did a whole show or segment that that he talked about on his channel. And he was like the feature personality of this whole feature piece. And what they were talking about was sort of I almost want to call it the new atheist movement, like the sort of current culture of, YouTube atheists and all the different channels and stuff like that. And I kid you not, the entire selling point of the benefit of everything that they're doing is that they're friendly, that they're the super nice atheist and they're not combative at all. They're not like the big bad Christopher Hitchens and the Richard Dawkins and the Daniel Dennett and Sam Harris. So those are the four horsemen, for those who don't know this. And they were labeled sort of the leaders of the quote unquote new atheist movement. And they take a lot of criticism because people say that they were angry and that they were ranting and that they just really were disrespectful of religious people. And so Genetically Modified Skeptic, to me, has built this whole brand on being the nice atheist. And this got me. It got me to click. It got me wondering what he's talking about, because I'm just wondering if he's, well, we're gonna see where he's at. I don't want to speculate too much, but it's very interesting because I feel like he has both these things happening. Maybe he's starting to come around and start to see some of the problems I've been talking about. That's why this got me. That's why this got me so interested, because it's not really just reacting to genetically modified skeptic. It's an opportunity for me to take the content in, but also use this as an opportunity to reflect on what is going on in the sort of the meta of this entire community, like the sort of bigger picture of how we approach these issues, because this, I feel like, is a thing that is a point of contention in the atheist community. Like, a lot of us really feel very strongly about sort of being super friendly, being super nice. Me personally, I fall into the camp of not really thinking that that's so effective. Also tending to be angry. Like, I do have a lot of anger about the subject. So I tend to go for the jugular. So we'll see how this plays out, y'all. But I'm very curious. Definitely got me to click and see what's going on. And I was like, all right, let's just watch it live and react with the gang. We'll get into this together. All right, so let me go ahead and get our little situation going here. So first thing we're gonna do, gotta switch the screen share. So I'm gonna hit it with the Autobots transform. Then y'all already know you got to roll out. And then you can go over here and hit it with the blow up weight. And if you want, you could even throw that little John Madden flavor, like boom. Hey, Sumami.
Over my years of being an atheist public figure, I've gained a certain reputation. Who is GMS? Genetically Modified Skeptic, atheist YouTube channel, but not in a militant way. The angry debate atheist thing is part of why I watch your channel. I don't get that crap here. I feel like you have one primary stipulation: love, kindness, and respect, always. I think he is one of the kindest atheist YouTubers I have ever seen. I'm flattered by comments like these, especially because it's important to me to set a positive example for my viewers and fellow content creators. I don't plan on changing my approach, but let's talk about some of the responses that nice atheists get from all sorts of people.
Yeah, and let's talk about it, because I wonder how many of those responses are from believers, and those responses had me sort of suspecting that those were people of faith responding to him, or else why would it matter, right? If somebody's saying stuff you agree with, you just agree with them. It's kind of doesn't make a difference. There's a few things that I think those comments jump right out to me as. Number one, they seem to reflect that sort of cultic Christiany ethos, that love your not just love your neighbor, but love your enemies and all of this stuff. And I always think when it comes to conversations around how we approach these issues, that it feels like a bit of like leftover dogma that's with us. The other thing is, I don't think this tactic is effective. Like, I don't think just being super nice to people about what I would consider important topics that you have strong disagreements about, I don't know that that's actually any more likely to get a person to come around to your way of thinking. I do want to acknowledge that he's does well for himself and he has a big audience. So clearly something he's doing is effective at getting people to absorb his content. And I know people say, well, if they listen to something like my content or Uncle Bobby's, like they can't get past all the swearing, and they they just don't like the style of presentation. So yeah, I mean, that's why I consider this channel and channels like it to sort of be that off ramp of Christianity. There's sort of the channels you can go to when you first start thinking about these things critically, and they're very receptive and welcoming to believers. I almost think that his channel is like more for uh, welcoming believers than it is for necessarily like challenging them or representing the atheist worldview. I think if he was playing more to his atheist audience, his content would be very different.
Plenty of you will probably relate to this first one. So, say I'm having a pleasant conversation with a religious person. I'm thinking, hey, they're really interested in my perspective. They're treating me very well. This is great. When suddenly they hit me with the classic line, you are so nice.
That's it, man. That's kind of a bold way to put it, Sumami. But I think I can understand where you're coming from. I wonder how they would say it's like interesting because they're like larger. They're considered the larger channels in this space, but at the same time, I don't know how much interacting they have with this community, at least our neighborhood. It's kind of like, how much is someone a part of your community just because you watch their stuff, or just because they may be like a featured speaker at a conference? I think people probably have different ideas about this, but I don't think there's anything unreasonable with that. And I think he might agree.
Oh, There's another version of this that I've received both in real life and in my comments. Well, it sounds to me like you're not really.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm getting at is somebody's popularity isn't necessarily going to be reflected in their personal interaction with their audience and whatever communities that's comprised of. And it's not necessarily like a bad thing, right? Like, some people, this is just their job, and they have their friends, they have their events and stuff that they like to go to, and they've just got their life.
Unbeliever, you're so kind.
What up,
and
native
seem
atheists?
to really care about getting to the truth. You'll find your way back to God soon enough. Of course, the problem with these statements is that they rely on the assumption that atheists are necessarily rude, bitter, close-minded, and dishonest. This is an untrue and hateful stereotype. The thing that makes a statement like this so cringeworthy for me is that the religious person is directly witnessing a refutation of this stereotype, and then, instead of discarding an assumption which has been shown to be false, they double down on it and insist that the atheist in front of them must actually not understand their own beliefs. Talk about commitment to dogma over data. Still, I try not to lose hope in people who say this. They see that I'm trying to be kind, and they're attempting to complement that, which is a start. Maybe with enough exposure to atheists with good character, they'll one day see that brazenly stereotyping others is simply done to serve the Bible.
All right, wait, let's go back.
The thing that makes a statement like this not really a non-believer, both in real life and in my comments, well, it sounds to me like you're not really a non-believer. You're so kind and seem to really care about getting to the truth. You'll find your way back to God soon enough. Of course, the problem...
In some weird way, like, this is the problem with us being too friendly to them too, right? Like, we're almost doing the same thing. Like, I don't know. I think that there's this sort of visceral awareness that Christians and believers have when they're in a conversation with somebody, to where they're always aware of or trying to take information in to determine whether or not somebody that they're having a conversation with is a believer or believes like them. And so what I'm getting at is, I think they're profoundly aware of our differences of opinion and how strong they are, and that it's sort of unnecessary to work too hard to be civil and give each other platitudes, because it winds up being insulting. And so, yeah, I think it's patronizing when Christians basically treat us as though we don't, we're not super committed in our atheism, or we don't understand what we're thinking about. But this is a tough thing. At the end of the day, we have serious conflicts about irreconcilable propositions. And to me, we both feel like there's a lot at stake. Like, from their perspective, they're going to hit you with, oh, if you don't get right with God, if you don't believe, I'm worried about your soul. I'm worried about what's going to happen to you after you die. I'm worried about your eternity. I want you to find the love of Jesus and build that relationship. Okay. For me, it's like, your whole life is a lie. They've probably been lying to you about this since you were a child, since you were soft in the head, and you've got all sorts of nonsense and BS that you believe, and you just, it's costing you so much. You're dedicating you're walking around telling people being a Christian is your identity. You're telling people this is the most important relationship you have in your life. I think there's an imaginary voice in your head, and you use that imaginary voice to make all your life decisions. Like, this is a real conflict. All right, let me skip forward a little bit. I wanted to hear that statement again.
Commitment to dogma over data.
Here we go.
Still, I try not to lose hope in people who say this. They see that I'm trying to
smash
be kind,
that
and
like
they're
button,
attempting
gang.
to compliment that, which is a start. Maybe with enough exposure to atheists with good character, they'll one day see that brazenly stereotyping others is simply done to serve the biases of their in-group and not to accurately describe the world around them. Sometimes religious people have no problem accepting that I'm simultaneously...
Now, Logan, good to see you here. Good to see you, Steph. Good to see everybody. I don't like being a nice atheist, but I try because it turns people off. There's something like super transformative about like that type of radical honesty for me, because I could just accept that so easily. Right? Like that just puts it so plainly. Like we're all just trying to get along. I ain't got time to be fighting with everybody. Yeah, I really want to pop off and say some rude stuff when Christians start spouting their nonsense. But, come on. It's just another day in the world full of Christians. And so I let it go because I'm trying to get along with people. Like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. What I don't like is when you're gonna be a nice atheist and then look down your nose at the people who are keeping it real. When you're gonna say that, that they're not being as effective and that's never gonna work, and like you've taken some sort of moral high ground, that tends to grind my gears. But very candid, Logan. I appreciate that. I think that's where a lot of us are.
An atheist and a person who acts with compassion. They'll encourage me to keep up the good work, and that is very meaningful to me. Eventually, though, I say something which I think is totally in line with the values I've previously praised, but they don't see it that way. They'll write me a sorrowful message saying something like, I have always supported you because you call for kindness in these videos, but you've really gone against that this time. What happened to respecting those who disagree with you and showing them empathy? Meanwhile, the hypocritical statement they're referring to is something like, I criticize his teachings because they're destructive in family relationships between atheists and Christians, and I criticize Turk himself because he sets a poor example for his audience to follow. I, according to Turek, have no objective standard for morality because I'm an atheist, though, so my criticism carries absolutely no weight at all for him. He has no reason whatsoever, apparently, to care about an atheist like me complaining that his teachings and influence destroy relationships, so he's just going to ignore me and move on like he's done every other time an atheist has ever criticized his ethics. Yeah, I think people should generally be treated with compassion, which is why I don't back down from calling out people who treat others badly or encourage harmful ideas. How are we to create a more compassionate world if we refuse to confront those who spread prejudice or engage in other types of harm?
Okay, but that to me right there is the foundational pillar of our disagreements here is how are we picking and choosing, right? It's weird to say oh, I'm gonna be super I'm gonna stand up against people who spread injustice and bigotry and all of that. So I'm gonna call out Frank Turek, but I'm gonna be super nice and not call out the average Christian. Like to me, they're all doing this. And that's where I think this is like actually a crucial conversation. I got to be honest with y'all. I think for the most part, the Logan Fisher approach is what we're all dealing with. Like for the most part, I think my guess is that for most people, you just have a life full of Christians. You got a family full of, or believers, right? But in my case, Christians, lowercase Christians. You got a family full of Christians. You got a lot of coworkers who are Christians, and it's just a mess. Like it doesn't feel socially practical to really speak our mind about their faith. Because there's just such a burden that comes with it. On top of that, for most of us, there's a lot of risk of losing or alienating loved ones, risk of, having professional or social consequences, risk of losing relationships. Okay, that's understandable. What I think we're then doing is taking that sort of coping mechanism and trying to rationalize it, trying to justify it. Instead of just being laying it bare as a coping mechanism, we're back to no, this is the way it's got to be done, and you got to love your enemy and all this other stuff. And like I said, that just gets back to the cultish type stuff. And here's where it becomes a problem, but it actually becomes a serious issue. This is the world we're dealing in. We're dealing in a world where Christians are on the wrong side of pretty much every serious issue we have. So when are we going to talk about the elephant in the room? Like COVID. Take every single aspect or element of the response to COVID-19, social distancing, masks, vaccines, work from home, whatever it is. Them church folks didn't want to have anything to do with any of it. Even though we knew, we had the data, we had the national media stories, print, TV, YouTube, all of that, to show them, look, the disease spreads when y'all all get together at church and it causes people to die. Putting it right in their face. Right in their face, y'all. They didn't care. Yes, Jesus loves me. Can't wait to go to church on Sunday. Look at the crap that the LGBTQIA plus all them beautiful queer folks have had to deal with. Again, getting violently assaulted, killed, having laws passed against your free exercise of your civil rights, your ability to just exist in public spaces, constantly being challenged, violence. And who is doing it? Who's doing it? Stop playing, y'all. We know who's doing it's the religious people. I'm not saying every single bigot is religious. Yes, there's a whole bunch of atheist assholes, but they don't have dogmatic reasons to be assholes. They're just assholes, and we could take care of them on an individual basis. But in terms of ideology that systematically causes people to oppress and be prejudiced against other people, come on. It's Christianity. They spent 50 years trying to destroy women's reproductive rights in this country. And when they finally overturned Roe v. Wade, how many people did you hear talking about this is a victory for the Republican Party. This is a victory for conservatives. This is a victory for the GOP. This is a victory for family planning. No, none of that. What was every single one of them fools talking about that day as soon as they could get close to the microphone? This is a victory for God. Oh, today this is a victory for God. Look at the wars that are happening right now. At some point, we have to just stop playing and realize, like, it's time to speak out about this stuff. And Frank Turk is small potatoes compared to what we're trying to deal with. And it is buying in to these religious cults, these religious organizations that has us all messed up. And so to me, that's why we actually have to work systematically against all of it. And I think we should be angry about it.
Absolute tolerance, as philosopher Karl Popper suggested, allows for the propagation of intolerance. So, a tolerant society must at some point limit intolerance so as not to be overtaken. Isn't it the same with compassion? At some point, we have to decisively oppose unkindness, or else it will take over. I contend this is precisely what I do on my channel. Now, I have directly encouraged my viewers to be kind.
And let's just be clear what this commenter is saying. This is just a form of bullying to me. It's just a form of using peer pressure, sort of like it's weird. It's in fighting games they speak of conditioning. An example of conditioning might be, I really want to open you up for a combo overhead, but what I'll do is the first few times I really go in, I'll go in with a low attack. Why? Because what happens is my opponent's going to get conditioned thinking that I always go with this low attack. And then I could use that and boop, 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 whack, smack up their head, right? Because I've conditioned them to think to block low. And this is a similar type thing where it's like Pavlov's dog, right? I'm gonna give Drew a cookie every time he does a video that I like, every time he says something nice. That way he becomes conditioned to always be so nice. And then I could really hit him up anytime he says something that's really challenging to me. And I could be like, hey man, what's going on here? But look, it's just a means of control. And I gotta be honest, y'all. This is complex stuff, right? We're not talking about things that I think are super black and white. That's probably why I'm like interested in more in like these type of social dynamics things, right? Because all the apologetics is nonsense, and Christianity sitting on some BS. We already know this, but this thing that we're talking about, kind of dealing with the nuance of how to respond to all of this, how to deal with all of this, how to move forward. I think these are actually complex topics. And so on one hand, like, I really feel first off, let me say something. This is weird because I don't want y'all to think I'm being hypocritical here. Let me be very transparent. I like genetically modified skeptic. I hate when something like inspires me to talk about something that I have some critical thoughts on, and then it always just comes off as you're like attacking that person. I think I'm a fan. I've been a fan for a really long time. He's like one of the channels that kind of led me towards this community. Um, uh, which is kind of something we was talking about earlier with like Sumami, because I did eventually feel like I needed more community and active, and we could have a different conversation about that. But certainly, he's one of the channels I've enjoyed a lot of his content. I would love to meet him. I'm sure, we agree about a lot of things. I'm sure we'd have a blast. So, let it not. I don't want to trip. He's not like a apologist who I think is an asshole or something like that. But what one of the things I would think about, and I want to just acknowledge, like I said all that because I want to celebrate the success of his channel. Like, he's done a great job. He does great work. He makes good content. He puts a lot of work into it. He deserves his plaque and all the success he has. And so all of us, though, I think, need to reflect on this. What is the balance that we want to strike between it's really good that people who think differently than us are comfortable around us, versus we don't want the people who we strongly disagree with to get too comfortable around us. And I don't know what the answer is, gang. I want y'all to share this video. I want y'all to share my channel and Maya's channel and Stephanie's channel and Bree's channel and all of our channels, Nitty's channel, whoever, all the gang, y'all, everybody, man. I love that. Our gang's getting so big. It's like, you better not start naming names. But I don't think there's necessarily a lot of believers here. When we tend to have believers come through, we've definitely have some friends who are believers out here in this YouTube space, and we've interacted with a bunch of them since this channel started. It normally doesn't go too well, y'all. And we usually start off being extra friendly and nice and accommodating and patient. Look, we got the stuff we've done live, man. We got tape, man. We can pull tape and show people, man. We treat people good when they first come around here. But eventually, just because of the tone of the channel, the nature of the community that tends to aggregate here, and just, hey man, when certain stuff comes up, especially like people who've called the show and we've kind of gone back and forth, like, we're gonna keep it real with you. And so most of the time they end up leaving, getting blocked, some combination of the two, you know, or just falling off. Like it just doesn't go well. And sometimes I feel bad about that, but sometimes I feel really good about that, because sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm probably keeping it real, and they probably know, like, it's probably not a comfortable watch for them a lot of times. And I don't necessarily know what the right answer is, but I think that is playing into these comments that he's getting here, right? There's certain people who, again, he disagrees with about very important things, but they expect him to make them comfortable. So comfortable that when he says something or does something challenging to them, they feel the need to call him out and really push back on him about it. So I feel his struggle, because, you know, he's trying to keep it real. He's trying to challenge and push back and be critical where he needs to, but at the same time he is not trying to be antagonistic towards his viewers and the theist in his audience and all of that type of stuff. But then we got to really ask ourselves, it's layers, y'all. I'm just giving y'all, it's like an iceberg. Y'all know them iceberg videos. All right, we're going to take to the next layer of the iceberg. What's beneath that, right? What's beneath that, what's really going on is, like I said, striking that balance. Because think about it this way. They're sort of telling you, yeah, man, your real friendly approach, I really like that. So I've been comfortable watching your videos. I've been a fan for a long time. Let's say they've been a fan for like a few years. So they've been watching this channel for a few years. Well, what the hell are we doing? It's like, if you come through my evolution class and you're a creationist, and literally one of the focus and topics of our conversation in the class is evolution versus creation, and why creationism is not science, and trying to teach that in a science class. We hope that by the end of the semester, you can correctly distinguish between the two and know that creationism is some nonsense. But we might be kind of disappointed in ourselves if our class lasted for 2 or 3 years and you still hadn't made heads or tails of the topic. Right? So that's the struggle, gang. It's like, you don't want to end up being so abrasive that you don't have the opportunity to reach people who you want to reach, if reaching those people is, you know, part of your goal or important to you. Right? Like, part of what we accepted, like, and I say we a lot because, you know, I don't always be knowing what to do or how to approach things, and we be chopping it up and gathering. And I take consideration from what different people have to say, but like, one of the things I accepted is that I was just going to focus on our community and our friend group and trying to grow people who are into what we do, whatever that is. Because, to be honest with you, we never really know the future direction of this channel, because I'm always thinking about changing it drastically. But the one thing I know I want to do is maintain the relationships with the people that have become really important to me, right? So part of that decision, y'all, I'm gonna share where it's going. Part of that decision was understanding, okay, if we don't have more and more theists coming through the channel, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. You know what? It would be amazing if they did. I would love to have a call-in show. I would love to just be like, yo, I'm gonna open up the line at the end of this call, and just know that there's gonna be, you know, a long queue of theists just waiting to call in and talk to me and chop it up. That would be amazing, yo. I think that would be so cool. Again, please share this channel. I would just love that. Right? But I accepted in focusing on the community we have and not necessarily being a safe haven for theists, that just might not happen. So you can go so far that way that you just don't even have the opportunity to interact with those people if that's important to you. But the challenge for somebody like Drew would be, what does it say if they're comfortable enough to watch your stuff, let's say for years, and they still haven't changed their mind about it? They still have not critically examined their beliefs. It's like they're cool listening to you, watching you, they like your presentation, they're cool with your personality, but it's almost like lulling them into a state of accepting and accommodating their beliefs, and therefore they don't feel challenged. And this is what I mean when I start to say, like, I don't think being super friendly about these things is more effective. Number one, I don't think it's honest. And I don't think Christians need you to be that friendly. Like, they know as soon as you come to a place where you can look them in the face sincerely and tell them you're an atheist, they know it's on when you talk about God. They know. They know you don't believe. They probably suspect you think it's some nonsense. They just know. You don't have to be so kind about it. I do, like, sometimes start make it like analogous to sports. I've had people I'm very good friends with, but I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan and they are fans of the New York Giants. When it comes to talking about this football thing, we're just going to be going at it like cats and dogs. We already know that because, again, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan and they're a New York Giants fan. And I think we can treat belief the same way. Like, I don't have to be super nice to you about it. I could be like, bro, this sitting on some bullshit, yo. There's just no way. And when we go about our relationship, setting that aside, we can get along just fine. So but yeah, that's the question for this. And I think the comments he's getting shows that expectation. It's people basically making it clear to him, hey man, I expected to be able to sit around and listen to you for years and never actually be challenged or feel anything based on what you're saying to me.
Have empathy for others, and that sort of thing lots of times. Maybe, though, if we work together, regardless of our religious differences, we can help those he's influenced to see that thinking of and talking about atheists or anyone else in such simplistic, disparaging ways is not acceptable. I'm just trying to be honest about how I feel in the hopes of encouraging anyone, to improve the discourse in which we're all engaged. For your own sake, as well as the sake of others, try your best to anticipate these biases within yourself. Engage your outgroup with empathy, and try not to be so predictable. Something which caught me very off guard at first, but that I have now grown accustomed to, is the accusation from other atheists that I am some sort of imposter or traitor. They'll comment things like, he's not even a real atheist anymore, or it's sad to see you regressing to your former faith. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what either of those things mean, but that is the specific wording I have heard just dozens of times now. My guess is that they indicate agreement with another, better articulated complaint I sometimes receive. You're saying we should all just get along and treat religion with kid gloves, no matter how religious people treat us. When I'm encouraging kindness, as I do, I am not regressing to my former faith. I'm still an atheist, I just have a complex approach to this discourse. I'm also not suggesting that we should all hold hands and sing Kumbaya with those who perpetuate harm. As I've said previously, there comes a point where, because we care about others, we must fight against harmful ideas and behaviors. And I clearly do this in many of my videos. I will say, though, I do think there are some factors in play that make this misconception of my position more understandable. One, I'm rarely addressing the topic of atheist anger or vitriol holistically, but just giving a brief thought. Like, I want people to realize that, yes, while their anger is valid and that may be a place to start, if you stay there, you don't have long-term benefit from it. To my own role as a
All
kind
right,
of
pause the tape. All right, so a couple things. I don't want to lose my train of thought, but there's a lot going on here. A lot going on here. So first off, I just want to say, to a large extent, I think he's right. I think he's right, and there's issues of YouTube, and like he said, he has a complex approach to the topic, and I think that's right. I think that's absolutely right. And I think he makes great content that is, you know, in terms of the substance of his content, it's what you'd want people to hear. It's what you'd want them to understand. I would not hesitate if I had a genuine believer in my life, or someone genuinely doubting or going through deconversion, somebody who I thought I had an opportunity to help. I would not hesitate to send them his content. And I've done it in the past. I've actually done it in the past with people I've been friends with in real life who were doubting and going through deconversion. And a big part of how I tried to support them through that process, that they were very appreciative of, in addition to our personal conversations and back and forths, was I would send them content when our conversations made me realize that they were thinking about a particular issue or struggling with something. I would in a heartbeat find good content from genetically modified skeptic and others that I could send to them. There's a bit of what I think is patter, and by that I mean something we just say all the time, that if we key in on it a little bit, we'll see where there's, again, layers to this iceberg. And that is when he talked about sort of the critique saying, oh, we should, hold hands and treat religion with kid gloves no matter the harm they cause. That's almost a weird, straw man is the word that's coming to mind, even though I don't want to use that word, but it's a weird way to go about it both ways. Why? Number one, it's weird to use that as a particular critique from atheists, because I don't know many critical atheists that would say that about his approach. Right? Like who literally, like, I just don't. I don't know of any content creator or, serious atheist that thinks we should handle religion with kid gloves no matter what harm the religious people are doing. So that it's almost like I don't want to say a made up critique, right? Because maybe it's something they say, but it seems like I doubt it. It seems rather weird. And then on the flip side, from him responding to that, it's a bit too convenient, because again, I do think he has a complex and dynamic response to these issues. but it sort of allows him to sneak in a threshold. I don't want to say sneak in, but to utilize a threshold. And that's fine. I would say we all do that to some extent. It's just a matter of what language or how are you processing or thinking about an issue, and how does that influence the threshold? The reason I keyed in on it is because for some atheists, for a lot of atheists, it's an out, right? It's a way of defining what we think is going to be harmful. And my concern is usually it gets defined in a way that we don't have to call out people in our lives or people that we interact with in a way that would be uncomfortable. And then we can rationalize not calling them out on the basis that we don't think they were doing any harm. So to me, it would have been better to engage with the idea that, to me, the critique from well-meaning atheists, the critique from people like me, if there was one, and I think other people who think like me, if there was one, we wouldn't say, oh, you say we should handle religion with kid gloves no matter the harm they're doing. No, we just think you fall somewhere on the spectrum that's treating them, with kid gloves or really friendly more than others would, or in a way that, again, it just seems like it. To be honest, gang, I don't even think it's that much of a problem. It's just you can't do 5 things at once, right? You can't both be super abrasive and super warm, friendly, and opening. There's kind of, you need different body language, different content, different presentation style, everything. So his content, his approach is super friendly and opening and whatever. It's been very successful for his content and his channel. And there are just some drawbacks to that, or some consequences. There's the flip side of that coin. And this is us actually having a chance to talk about that flip side, which I appreciate. I'm like I said, y'all know, I said this grabbed me when I saw this. I was like, oh, we got to do this. I'm definitely here to have this conversation with him about this topic. Like, man, I wish we could talk about this in person. Because again, I wouldn't say anything different. We would be cool. I'm still buying beer and burgers and let's have some lunch and chop it up. Now, here's what's interesting about this to me. I'm gonna just, having said all that, I'm gonna just say fine, just fine. Whatever. Because to me, it's always harmful. So it just circles right back around to how do we respond to it? Because again, if you're gonna say, well, I'm ready to knuckle up or whatever with the Frank Turks of the world because I think they're doing harm. Well, even when you're talking to, the sweet, humble Christian in your life, they're either actively participating in the same harm, supporting the organizations and the leaders that are doing that harm, or they're victims. And so if somebody's just been that brainwashed, that that swept up in the fever of a cult, I think at some point that warrants stronger intervention. And so that's my deal. Is I think it's so easy to use this language of, yeah, well, we should really handle religious people when they're harmful, when they're nasty, when they're whatever. And then it becomes almost like the fundamentalist, the extremist type thing. The fundamentalists are over there, the extremists are over there. And we define it in such a way that, again, we get out of having to really bring this issue up with the people we know and love, because we say they're not fundamentalists, they're not extremists, or they're not doing any harm to anybody. But I think we just disagree about whether or not that's actually true.
Influencer and content creator colors what I say quite a bit, and possibly to a point that even I am not always cognizant of. Often when I'm imagining a scenario where an atheist should show more patience and empathy than is typical, I'm thinking in the context of hosting a call-in show with religious callers or making a response video. So I'll say things like, if you don't take the time to empathize with your interlocutor and just respond with anger, you're not helping anyone and are setting a bad example. Because, yeah, constantly shouting at callers because you're frustrated by hearing about Pascal's wager again on a show you voluntarily hosted for some time is immature and sets a poor example to viewers and is destructive to atheist communities. The effect is the same when a person makes a video where they use insults and rage to get views instead of actually trying to make content which is thoughtful and well-produced enough.
Okay. All right. Okay. Does anybody not know who that was a reference to? Oh, boy, I didn't think we were gonna get into this today. I respect all of these people, and y'all know I have my own approach and my own inspirations. Like honestly, Derek is one of my favorite streamers, my favorite YouTube creators, and I happen to get along with them, consider him a friend, and I don't do anything like the approach he has on his channel, on my channel. Uncle Bobby is literally probably my favorite YouTuber. And I get to host a show with them. I mean, it's just unbelievably cool. But definitely we all have our own approach, and I respect other people's approaches, I guess, is what I'm getting at. But I respect Matt Dillahunty. Like, I wouldn't take this shot at Matt. I think this is where we get into this issue, right? Because again, just hit me with the Logan Fisher. Just tell me, bro, being an atheist is hard. It's a lot of Christians in my life. I ain't really trying to fight every day like that. Okay, cool. We get it. Cool. No problem. But now this gets into where we're gonna say that the people who are doing it differently are setting a bad example. They're being destructive to the community. I don't like that. And of course I'm biased because y'all know I'll let it fly around here. And so and I've had that criticism said about me, that it's not a good example, it's not a good approach, and also I've been told that I'm destructive to the atheist community, which is a hurtful thing to hear, especially because people know how seriously I take community building. But that's okay. That doesn't mean, just because I care about it doesn't mean I'm doing it right and or well. And but it's a hard thing to hear. And I take issue with it. Especially, it's easy to talk about this because this is not me. I'm gonna just go ahead and talk about Matt Dillahunty because that's the elephant in the room. Personally, I actually think that the approach of those shows helped build community in my case. Genuinely, right? Like I talk about it, but I've talked about my journey a little bit. We could go over it some other time, but to give you the abbreviated version, I started watching content that was mostly like debates. I was actually looking for audio technical problems to fix, and like I was going to make tutorial videos about how to fix audio problems. And I actually got really interested in the content, seeing the back and forth, because I wasn't like new to atheism and hadn't really, started articulating it and being more public about it. And I was isolated during the pandemic. I then got into like more like lecture stuff, right? And that was cool. And then things got better for me when I started to actually find people that were making current content. And that's kind of where his type of channel fit into: Rationality Rules, Holy Kool-Aid, that whole space of, people who make well-produced videos that come out regularly. But I would find that I was going through a lot of that. There wasn't a lot to interact with, right? And that's when I started to find like Pine Creek's channel and Mythvision, and seeing like, oh, okay, so there's people who are making, stuff that's more interactive. They're interacting with the audience. They're having different discussions. And that was super cool. And the call-in shows were a huge part of that for me. And I really like those shows. And those shows help me feel connected to a community. And even the emotion that sometimes comes out, first off, I always feel is very tempered. Like it's tempered to adult television. In other words, I don't think Matt really be snapping on people the way people portray it. Like, come on, y'all. It's like, if you really think that him saying he's done and, telling somebody to fuck off and hanging up the phone is a big deal, like, get out of here. So I just don't agree. I think those shows are great for the community. I do think they help build community. I don't think it's setting a bad example. Again, I think these people are really childish, and they, in my opinion, a lot of times deserve to be spoken to that way. That's just how I see it. And that's how he honestly feels about the things they say. And that felt relieving to me. It felt really nice to know that I wasn't alone, that that other people felt that these things were as ludicrous as I do. The other thing is, a lot of those callers are just not up to the task. A lot of them clearly have been waiting a long time to call in and kind of show up the host. They're dishonest in a lot of their approaches and what they want to talk about. And, a lot of them don't even really stick to the question that they provided the call screener. So there are these super frustrating calls. Somebody says they call in to say one thing, they really want to give you some 30-minute backstory about some other thing. They pretend like they don't know anything, and they're just asking questions, and they're being all nice to you. And then, once you provide a couple challenges, things they say, all of a sudden they know more than everybody, and it's just ridiculous. And then again, the man's been doing it for like 20 years. So yeah, I don't know, but this is where we start to turn. It starts to go from, yeah, I'm a nice atheist, and here's why I'm a nice atheist, to, again, really critiquing people who take a more direct and different approach. And that's what I really don't like. because again, it seems like back to the cultists, you got to love your enemies and you got to out Christian the Christian and all of this type of nonsense
to get views. But I can see how my viewers could hear my statements about atheist anger and think, so when my family is constantly gaslighting or harassing me just because I left the religion, I should just be nice and hear them out instead of standing up for myself? This is definitely not the impression I want to give. So I want to more comprehensively address the anger that atheists, myself included, often feel as a result of the religious intolerance we can face or at least witness. So here goes. First of all, being upset about injustice is not a bad thing in itself. It makes perfect sense to be upset when someone is not being treated justly. Sometimes shutting another person down, calling them abusive or ignorant, or using aggression to protect yourself is absolutely necessary. If you are being bullied, abused, or assaulted, it is totally natural and acceptable to be angry, and it's okay to use your anger as fuel to protect yourself. I myself have unfortunately had to do that many times in my personal life when religious people became abusive toward me. Living in our anger and using it as fuel every day is not ideal long-term, though. Motivating yourself with or dwelling in strong negative emotions can be very detrimental to your mental health if done for extended periods of time.
All right, now here's something I was thinking critically before, and I don't want to bring it up. I want to bring it up before he moves on. There's a couple things here. First off, I think Christianity is abusive. Uncle Bobby sometimes talks about the 4 symptoms of battered spouse syndrome, and every single one of them applies to Christianity. The irrational belief that your abuser's omnipresent, the irrational belief that if your abuser doesn't hurt you, they'll hurt someone close to you, the irrational belief that you find your sense of worth in your abuser, and the irrational belief that you deserve the abuse that is being done to you. All of that defines Christianity. Okay, so being a Christian is being in an abusive relationship. But I brought all that up to set that aside. Because what I'm actually trying to talk about now is being in relationship with Christians is an abusive relationship. The first issue is they're in an abusive relationship with God. They don't realize that, but that's what's up. My new concern is that we're in an abusive relationship with them. And that's the problem here. And what I mean by that is we're not in the relationship as equals. If we're 2 friends and we're like, yo, let's grab dinner, okay, and the options are Mexican food, Chinese food, or pizza, we should both be on equal footing as friends to discuss how we honestly feel in this moment about what we want to eat. If we're in an unequal relationship or there's an uneven power dynamic, your desire to have pizza trumps my desire to not eat pizza. And this is the type of nonsense we're in with Christians in our lives, except it's way worse. They literally believe, if they were honest about what they claim to believe, that we're going to be tortured forever or otherwise meet our demise and be smited by God for not believing in this God. We believe that their beliefs are silly, harmful, and have nothing to do with reality. But rather than being able to say that, we have to walk on eggshells in the entire relationship just to maintain the relationship. So even this whole thing that we're doing, even this whole insistence that you're being nice, is literally telling somebody who's in an abusive relationship, as far as I'm concerned, that they really just need to continue to be pleasant with their abuser because it's better for them. And I don't get how people don't see this. Like, cool, I get it. You don't want to tell your family you're Christian because your grandmother would be devastated. Guess what? You and your grandmother have a seriously fucked up power dynamic. Y'all have a seriously fucked up power dynamic. Don't feel bad about it because I got the same fucked up power dynamic in my family. But it isn't right. It isn't right that I, as a scientist with a PhD in evolutionary biology, has to keep my fucking mouth shut so my Bible thumping parents can continue to preach about the God of the Bible and his creator powers. My literal knowledge, one through over a decade-long graduate education, is just not meaningful compared to their fucking hocus pocus. That is a fucked up power dynamic. And it's the power dynamic most of us are dealing with most of the Christians in our lives. Gang, it is to the point they are actually being lied to by a cult that has been indoctrinating them their entire lives, who is exploiting them to the tune of 10% of every check plus break off a little something proper to drop in the offering bin. Paying God taxes. You mess around, turn to them when you actually need some help, they'll tell you they ain't got it. But if you had the audacity to tell them they've been lied to and that this is all nonsense, they will be mad at you, not mad at the people that have been lying to them and taking their money. That is a fucked up power dynamic. And now we're supposed to believe you shouldn't even be angry about it. You're literally a human being, a social species. You are part of a species that is dependent on other human beings, namely your family and friends, who are the only people you can count on to have any sort of desire to take your needs in life into consideration and when it comes to their needs in life. And you can't count on them because they've been indoctrinated into some cult. And you literally just got to play it cool. The other thing that bothers me about when he says this is it kind of goes to what they've been saying in the chat, like where people just have different experiences. Some people don't have the lived experience to understand what other people are going through. Now, whether that's related because you just haven't seen Christianity at its worst, or I really think it's a personal thing. I think it's part of his personal psychological makeup. I think he's probably a person, if I was reading him correctly, he's probably a person who's just genuinely non-combative, somebody who's very, very uncomfortable with confrontation, and someone who would rather put up with than really have it out over something. But it again is cult-like hocus pocus, almost like The Secret type of woo-woo thinking to just tell people to be less angry. Like, would you dare go to places right now where people's towns are being ravaged by war and be like, yeah, well, I know this war thing's really terrible, but turns out it might last for a while. So, I mean, are you really going to be this devastated and crying about losing family members every day? I mean, in the end, I mean, you're just going to have to learn to, like, I know that was kind of an extreme example, but it's to show you how insensitive this type of reasoning is. It's just, it pretends as though people are waking up and they're choosing anger. They woke up in the morning and just thought, oh yeah, well, I could just relax, everything's fine, I'm having a good day. Nah, I want to be pissed at the fact that my family lied to me for 30 years and then won't even have an honest conversation with me about it. That's magical thinking and victim blaming, straight up. And when people say stuff like this, it just really makes me think they don't take Christianity seriously. Like, they're like, it's just all a game to them. And to me, that is more of the cult. Where, certain people believe it's more important to always look good and always look like you feel good than it is to actually feel good. And this to me is that talk, just like give yourself a pep talk and keep up the appearances of, being pleasant and everything's fine, and choose not to be angry. And it just doesn't work that way.
It can make you overly harsh and unnecessarily distrustful toward others, leading to isolation and loneliness, among other things. Unfortunately, preventing oneself from feeling constant anger due to injustice isn't as easy as ignoring it or deciding to get over it. Ideally, one should first get out of a living or other social situation which regularly causes anger. Because a lot of people can't do this, though, I try to fight for atheist and other minoritized groups to be understood so that I can hopefully help their situation get better even from a distance. For those who can't get out of a hard situation, I encourage you to do self-care. Take up a hobby that you can channel some aggression into. Take time to do particularly relaxing things like nature walks or taking baths. Most importantly, find others who can understand your experience and talk to them regularly. Don't cope with your situation alone if you don't absolutely have to. A lot of people find mockery very cathartic, especially when they first become an atheist. I know I did. Expressing anger in the form of mockery, I think, is actually fine when directed at a person in power who abuses that power. Mockery is an appropriate tool for the marginalized to use. This raises the question, then, is the average religious person in power? Certain religious people do hold a position of privilege, so at times there is a social power differential between a believer and an atheist. In many contexts, like a one-on-one conversation with an acquaintance or someone on social media, this isn't the case, though.
All right, again, I just lacking nuance here. Again, I would say in a lot of those relationships we have with Christians, there is a power difference. And the Christian is in the privileged position. And even if you're just having a conversation with the average believer, first off, they've assumed a privileged position, literally by assuming that it's okay to just have these irrational beliefs and be all types of put off when other people don't buy into it. But again, setting that aside, to me, y'all, he just told on himself. He just said the quiet part out loud. And and it's part of the problem with the atheist community. It may be tied up to the demographics or whatever they have going on in their life. But when you say you and a peer or a colleague sit down and have a conversation about belief with the average believer, and there's no real power difference, and it's okay for marginalized people to use mockery, but you're not again, he is literally confessing that he does not recognize atheists as a marginalized group. And that is one of the central focuses of this channel, is to get this atheist community that I do have access to start to recognize that we are marginalized so that we can act like it. Again, it's like talking out of both sides of our mouths. On the one hand, you got to be super nice to everybody, treat everybody with kid gloves. Don't speak out against religion because it might ruin your relationships and your life. And then on the flip side, turn around and say, oh yeah, I know I'm not able to speak my truth with my loved ones, but I'm not marginalized. Are you kidding me? Also, please notice how letting people know you're an atheist potentially socially ostracizes you. You could lose your job or be held back from promotion in your career. You severely limited your options in terms of a romantic partner. And good luck if you think you're going to run for office. Matter of fact, good luck even having a representative in office. So what more does it take to qualify as a marginalized group? On top of that, whatever biases and prejudices you think Christians sometimes have against particular groups, and we know that book says some real messed up stuff about particular groups, it does not hold any group in more disrepute than non-believers. The people who are the enemies of the God, who reject God's love, blah, 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 blah. Oh, it talks about them way worse than the sodomites and the homosexuals and the slaves and subordination women. None of that compares to what the Bible has to say about people who reject God. So that is right. I'm actually glad he said it. I'm glad he said. I'm glad y'all got to hear him say it, because now we know what the difference is. And I don't know if it's just because he doesn't consider himself marginalized in any other aspect of his identity, so he doesn't recognize marginal status even when he has it. But this is crazy to me that this is where we're at. It's 2023, and some of the most popular atheist content creators on the internet don't think atheists are a marginalized group.
Here, I think mockery is most likely counterproductive.
Oh, also, we disagree about this mockery thing. I think mockery is productive. Just try it. First off, I don't think they have this. I don't think they have this data. I really don't. I think a lot of the pleasant. Here's what I think's happening. I think a lot of the pleasant, friendly interactions we have that are effective, they're effective with people who are already questioning. So they're already having some doubts about their faith or some issue with their church, or maybe they've openly even started to doubt whether, God is real or not. And so, of course, with these sort of open and receptive people, it's better to be kind. There's no reason to be unkind to them. They are genuine seekers, genuine interlocutors. They're trying to understand. We can help them understand. Yeah, we do better with those folks when we're kind to them. But they're already on the road. Make no mistake about it. I think a lot of atheists who are more vitriolic, to me, are responding authentically with their real emotions. But if you go to the other end of that spectrum, I think it just circles us right back around to the beginning of this video, which is he's starting to believe the coaxing that the theists in his audience use to control him. Basically, what I'm saying is they keep giving him this feedback. Drew, you're such a nice one. Oh, it's so great. You're so respectful. We love that you don't hurt anybody's feelings. I'm so comfortable here. I love your stuff. Bravo, 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 bravo. That he takes that as and understandably, I understand why. It's good feedback. He takes that as feedback that his approach is actually more effective. But again, Christians applauding you because they're comfortable with your content is not the same as saying your friendly approach is actually more effective at deconverting people. And this is where the civility politics and the polite parade comes in. Rather than actually, and this is what happens when you don't identify as marginalized, you don't feel like anything needs to be changed about what's going on. You're okay with the status quo because you don't think it marginalizes you. Yo, I don't care how nice you are to Christians. I don't care how well you get along with them. I want them to change their goddamn minds or stop wasting our time. And to me, the fact that they're going to sit in your chat and watch all your videos for 3 years and they still as devout today as they were the first day they started watching your stuff, that's not telling me your content's very effective. That's not telling me this approach is very effective. And so I just think we have to be careful about what the feedback we get is really saying. And again, negative feedback is just part of the process. People respond to both. A lot of times these conversations, they remind me of teaching. And this super friendly approach to me reminds me of like the approach you take where all the feedback you give your students is positive. You try not to even you try not to even make them worry. You don't want them to be too worried about their grade, all that type of stuff. What I've learned the hard way is they just overlook that. Right? If I don't take any points off your assignment, you'll never look at it again. Taking points off, letting somebody know they fell short of the mark is how you get them to pay attention. Oh my goodness, I got a 78. Oh my goodness, what did I miss? What did I get wrong? Now they're curious. And believe it or not, that's part of learning. They're not learning if I say, well, you used the right vocabulary words, you didn't put them together in the right order. It's not clear that you can define this concept in your own words, but it's close enough. They're never going to look at it again. And then what happens when it comes up in their project? What happens when it comes up in, you know, their actual final assessments and stuff like that? Yeah, they haven't learned it yet. Why? Because you never told them anything was wrong with how they put it the first time. So that's my thing here. And I believe that sometimes, and again, I'm not. It's kind of bad to transition that into mockery because obviously I don't think you should mock your students, but I actually think mockeries. One, I think it's appropriate here. I think these ideas are that ridiculous. Two, I think it's a pretty non-invasive procedure. We're not advocating violence. We're not advocating ostracizing them. We're not advocating cutting them off. You got to be able to do something. I think mocking ridiculous ideas is pretty gentle. And people don't like being wrong. People don't like being ridiculed. People don't like being made to look stupid. So those are all powerful tools in the kit to get somebody to actually change something so that they can correct that perception. So yeah, and Uncle Bobby, good to see you, brother. And yeah, I agree. Our content should make them uncomfortable. And Wayne has said this before too. If they can tell us we're going to hell, then we can tell them their belief system is trash. Period. End of story. I mean, couldn't said it any better.
See not all, but many dogmatic and ignorant people, religious or not, as products of an unfortunate environment. That person calling an atheist call-in show to tout Pascal's wager like it's a brand new knockdown argument, they probably heard it from a religious authority, and since they don't have the skills to question that authority, are just repeating something they've genuinely never heard anyone examine critically. You're a lot more likely to create understanding between you and them if you respond calmly, explaining why that line of reasoning is flawed, than if you shout your response or treat them as an adversary from the start.
And again, who does this? This feels like another one of those examples that doesn't happen. How many of you out there, when somebody just, happens to mention that Pascal wager logic, did you go, oh my God, that's Pascal's wager. You're a moron. Oh my goodness. And then you take your drink and you pour your drink on top of them. And then you go outside and you just like, look, you're like, oh good, it's raining. Here's a mud puddle. You just throw them down into the mud puddle and you start chucking rocks at them. I mean, who does that? Most of the time you just go, oh yeah, that's Pascal's wager. That's been debunked a long time ago, but here, let me break it down for you. Also, I'm not sure if you know this, but Pascal actually was using that and said explicitly that was not an argument for God. So maybe hit up your boy Pascal and actually read what he said. That's literally most of us. That's how we respond to that. Who starts ranting and raving and yelling when somebody mentions Pascal's wager? But again, like also Christians got to stop doing that. It is really irritating that we spend so much time asking basically one simple question. Honestly, I feel like so much of this community and what drew me into it was motivated by one central question. And it is the question that Matt Dillahunty has been asking for 20 years. What do you believe and why do you believe it? And you are constantly getting routinely debunked arguments that these people parrot without looking into it for themselves. That's I mean, you gotta talk about that, because it's like, my man, you heard somebody say this, you didn't Google it, you didn't read about it, you didn't look into it, and then you just called into a show like you was gonna checkmate the atheists with this. I mean, you got to let them know they weren't prepared. That's a huge thing. That definitely reminds me of teaching. There are way there are definitely two different routes that students go to correction. You have the students that do everything, read everything, participate, do all their exercises, and then they're just caught up on a concept or two. They're just not getting it. They just can't quite put it into their own words. They're zigging when they should be zagging. You have to go correcting that very carefully, because correcting that is a matter of content. It's a matter of, we need to address the substance of your understanding, right? Then you have the student that comes up to you and doesn't understand why they failed the exam, and you go back and you look at your grade spreadsheet and you're like, oh yeah, there's a reason I don't know your name. It's because I never see you. It's because you don't show up to our class sessions, and you don't have a grade for most of the assignments because you didn't hand in most of the assignments. That student is unprepared for the exam. You correct them very differently. You tell them to take their monkey ass back to their dorm and go study. They were not ready, right? So there's a difference between somebody who was prepared incorrectly, or prepared but, missing the execution, versus somebody who was genuinely not ready for this. And to me, you calling Matt Dillahunty's show, you need to at least understand the assignment. So yeah, they get that pushback.
If hearing the same arguments or claims directed at you over and over gets you too frustrated to respond calmly and productively, then it's probably best to limit those kinds of interactions to a level you can handle. One of the most commonly asked questions I get in my comments is, how do you stay so calm? Or how do you have the patience for this? The answer is, plenty of the issues I respond to in my videos do make me angry. They're worth being angry about. But because I think these issues are also very important and complex, I take my time to craft what I think is the most effective response. This means discussing the issue with my wife or a good friend to get another perspective, researching the issue, outlining my thoughts, taking time away from the issue to do self-care, returning to my outline to flesh it out, and then editing what I've written. Basically, I don't give myself more than I can emotionally handle, and I take the time I need to inform and communicate with my audience most effectively. One of the reasons I am rarely on any other social media besides YouTube and have such a relaxed upload schedule is that living on the internet and overworking myself negatively affects this process. To sum up, being a nice atheist, or just an atheist in general, can be frustrating because in a lot of social contexts, atheists are misunderstood, treated unjustly, or just recognize the injustice excused by religion. It's natural that this angers us, and like any other emotion, that anger can be used in a way that helps us or hurts us. There are steps, sometimes difficult ones, we can take to harness our anger and use it to overcome the injustice that causes it in the first place. Some people, like myself, are fortunate enough to be in a situation where this is more doable than it is for others. I try to use my good fortune to productively strike at the cause of our anger for the sake of others, and I encourage others, particularly the more fortunate, to do the same. Thanks for watching. I've been Drew of Genetically Modified Skeptic. Thank you to my patrons for the—
Wow, gang, we got a lot out of that. Okay, first off, that's exactly what Sumami was talking about. He is an atheist content creator, and it sounds like, to maintain his healthy work-life balance, he doesn't spend a lot of time knee deep in what is going on in this community. A lot of people don't. That's fine. But it kind of shows in the sense that you may not be as up to just how ridiculously flooded with nonsense this space is. So it was interesting that he pretty much just came out and said that, which is what people kind of suspected already. Again, it's not right or wrong. It's just where he's coming from. I do find this whole thing really interesting. I thought overall he made a strong case, and it was interesting that he had pulled some of those contents. I think you could tell he's a bit irritated that people think of him this way. But I got to be honest, man, like this is his brand. This is his brand, and it is how I think of him. Like, I think of him as a super friendly, nice atheist, very easygoing, and I don't think his stuff is very challenging for Christians. I wouldn't take it so far as to say he's reverted to his former faith, but I would take it so far that he's trying to out-Christian the Christians, that he very much has a love your enemies approach, and that he's bought into the politics of civility. And again, if that's just your approach, that's fine. I think he's probably just a person who's not comfortable with conflict. These are serious topics. These are serious issues. But, you know, he finds his own way to make his content work. And I don't knock anybody for that. What I don't like is that he sort of ended this video when he got to his peak. He shifted it back to what his Al Jazeera video was about, which is where he was taking shots at other atheists who respond to these issues differently. In particular, the angry atheists, and I think he was taking shots at the Matt Dillahunties of the world. Again, I know Uncle Bobby, we take the straight on, no, we're just going to tell you this is sitting on some bullshit approach. But I didn't, again, I don't like that. I think it was kind of strawmanned, in the sense of, oh, atheists say that I should treat Christians with that I advocate for treating Christians with kid gloves, no matter what harm they're doing. I don't think anybody's coming at you saying that we should treat Christians with kid gloves no matter what harm they're doing. But man, that served as an awfully convenient way for him to basically excuse himself for not challenging most Christians, because he can just say that they're not doing any harm. And the comments about the Dillahunties of the world, I find problematic because it makes me feel like Drew he's just not taking this stuff seriously. And I kind of have him pegged now as like atheist content creator isn't really about the struggle. To be honest with you guys, I think this is one of the great struggles of our time. I genuinely believe we live in a time where most reasonable people, with what I would consider a broadly accessible education or access to information, have enough information at their fingertips to know that religions are false in a way that's never been true in the history of this planet. Religion's goose is cooked. It's over. It's done. It's not true. It is the product of human imagination. We have an overwhelming amount of evidence to show that. We also have an overwhelmingly productive model of the world we live in and the universe around us, we've explained so much, and it just does not coincide with the God model. It is no longer reasonable, in my estimation, to continue to be religious. People do so for a number of reasons, usually related to the way they were raised and the culture and family they were raised in. Sometimes it's due to personal struggle, peer pressures, whatever it might be. But neither me, nor any of you, nor Matt Dillahunty in his 20 years, nor a genetically modified skeptic and all the time he's done YouTube, have we been hit with a single solitary reasonable piece of evidence to suggest that these supernatural entities exist. So it's just done. Yet religious people and their religious ideology still dominates the social sphere. Again, atheists are messed up too. They have all sorts of bad ideas, but there's no ideological reason having them acting a fool. And whether we look at COVID, LGBTQ issues, women's rights, the ability of communities of people of color to, manage their own affairs, the humane treatment of immigrants. We could just keep going down. Our involvement in the conflict in the Middle East. I mean, we could just keep going. The top most impactful issues of our day are all influenced by a seriously religious core manifesting itself politically that is on the wrong side of history every single time. And at this point, it's a denial of American history to see otherwise. Like, part of what I don't really get up in the atheist community's booty hole about is just slavery. Evangelical Christianity, as we know it today, was utilized to enslave African Americans. Period. End of story. There was religious inspired texts, how to make a Negro Christian and all this type of stuff. The links are so explicit. So really, when I hear, I was talking about the white boy problem in the atheist YouTube community. To me, they just want to ignore that. They want to sweep that part under the rug so that we could talk about the sweet Christianity that makes their aunts feel good. No, I don't want to do that anymore. Why? This thing has been holding us back for generation after generation after generation after generation. And they just want to put a happy face on it. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. And then the audacity to act like the people that are angry, they're being destructive, that's not sustainable. They should wake up and choose not to be angry. They're setting a bad example and they're destroying the community. No. That feels like something else going on. That's when it starts to feel like you sort of got your own little old boys club about you know, who's big on YouTube and what's the tone you guys are going to set. Now you guys are going to tone police the rest of the community, so that it's your way or the highway. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And the other thing was, to me, I wish he would have represented these criticisms more genuinely. That would have shown an awareness of what we're really critiquing him about. And to me, he just didn't do that. But like I said, I don't want it to get too heated. I actually like Drew. I think we all know what his stuff is, and we know what it's not, right? You know, it's good content. He seems like a cool guy. Like I said, I'm sure I would enjoy hanging out with him. But this is a reflection of a bigger tension in the atheist community. And to me, I think those of us that really try to hit Christianity hard, we're taking it seriously. We are recognizing, you know, to me, it's personal, right? Like, my family is in a cult. Like I said at the beginning of the show, my PhD in evolutionary biology that I spent over a decade in graduate school for means nothing in my family compared to my grandparents' hocus pocus creationist nonsense. And my family will continue to be delusional until the day they die. That hurts. And like most of you, we can't even be honest with them about how we feel about that faith, even though they tried to indoctrinate us in that faith, like I said, from 15 to 55 years in many of our cases. We can't even have an honest conversation with them about it for fear of entirely losing the relationship. Gang, this is serious. This is a serious problem. And it's causing serious societal ills in our world. And I think at some point we've just got to knuckle up and say, we've taken enough, we've held our tongue enough. It's time to be honest. So that's my piece on that. Appreciate y'all. So glad to see everybody. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. There's a lot of people here. Please do smash that like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And you can definitely help us grow by sharing this stream. Otherwise, we will see you tomorrow afternoon for the Blackout and Hot program. There are links in the description. Come hang out with the gang and gather. That's what we'll be the rest of the day. There's a link in the description that says link up with the gang. That's how you get in to gather. So appreciate you guys. Love you guys so much. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.